Welcome back to another episode of Count Me In. I'm your host, Adam Larson, and I'm thrilled to have our special guest with us today, Josh Fonger. Josh is an experienced entrepreneur and the CEO of WTS Enterprises. In today's episode, Josh will enlighten us on the crucial difference between working in your business versus working on it, and why this shift is essential for growth, particularly for business owners and entrepreneurs. We'll discuss how getting caught up by day-to-day operations can hinder business growth, innovations, and long-term vision. Josh is an expert in helping companies navigate this challenge by utilizing the Work the System, or WTS, method. He emphasizes the importance of backfilling our current tasks and responsibilities so we can jump ahead and lead our organizations effectively. But it's not just about the concept. Josh provides practical insight on how to take action and implement a systematic approach to run a business. So get ready and gain some valuable insights, tips, and strategies as we explore the power of a systems mindset with our incredible guest. Let's dive right in. Josh, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited to talk about entrepreneurs and that systems mindset that you talk about. But to kind of get started, maybe we can start by discussing the difference of working in your business versus working on it and why that's essential for growth, especially for business owners and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and this is not a new concept. I think people have been aware of this, heard this for decades, popularized by the E-Myth. And so, Michael Gerber's best-selling book. And the key thing that I do is help companies actually make that happen. Yeah, and the big issue, of course, whether it's a manager, owner, CEO, is that they are doing the work as a technician instead of leading the work or growing the organization. And so that's kind of the key thing, is that if you're doing the work, then no one is doing the business growth. No one's doing the innovation. No one's doing the expansion. No one's doing casting the vision for the next series of years. Instead, they're talking about the next 5 minutes and maybe the next 5 hours. And that's really the issue, is that companies stay stuck when they're looking short term. And so, kind of what I focus in on is helping mechanically, because it's more than just an idea. They need to think differently, but then they actually have to take different actions, is help business owners and leaders take those actions in a methodical, mechanical way so that they're backfilling what they're currently doing, because you can't just jump ahead. Somebody's got to do the work.
Yeah.
Right. And so there needs to be a way, which we call working the system, or the WTS method, a way to backfill what you're currently doing so you can jump ahead and lead the organization. And the idea, again, simple enough, work on the business instead of in the business, but mechanically and infrastructure wise, to do that takes some heavy lifting, some rolling up the sleeves. And that's what we want all of our clients to get, is that there's a process you can take. And if you work the process, you work your systems, that freedom and that growth will become a mechanical reality.
So maybe we can dig in a little bit more into this work of the system method that you're talking about. I know that you have a book that we'll put a link in the show notes for everybody. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. Like, how does that enable your business owners to do things like increase profits, reduce time? I know those are a lot of things that you speak about. Maybe we can talk a little more detail on that.
Yeah. So everyone uses all their time, right? And everyone essentially uses all of their resources. And so you're bound by those. And so the way to expand your business, expand your life, is to do a better job with those resources. And so working the system is all about getting more efficient. And so how do we do that? Well, we help people not just react to the problems of their business or the stimuli that's coming their way, but instead take charge or take control of the systems that they know are going to keep happening. So instead of just reacting to a phone call coming in, instead manage or control that system so that you and your team know how to answer the call to be the best with it. And I just say answering the phone is one of 300 different systems that maybe your company has. And instead of winging each system and kind of following it the way you've always done it before, if you take the time to look at each system as a separate entity and then figure out what is the best way to make it the fastest, the lowest cost, the highest efficiency, the highest profitability, like what are the ways we can optimize each of those little pieces, which can be done if they're written down and looked at objectively. You're going to find that the assemblage of those separate pieces are going to result, we're talking to math folks here, accountants, is the result is going to be a much better business, right? It's not going to be a surprise when your company is running way better, way more profitably, when the separate pieces that make up your business are each improved by 5%, 10%, 20%. Each of these pieces are then going to equate to a much, a multiple of what you ever thought possible. Because when we work with companies, everyone's already working hard, right? Everyone's already doing their best. And so we let them know you're gonna have to work differently if you're going to expand beyond your current best, because everyone's already trying their best. Everyone's already working hard. Everyone's already maxed out. So knowing that plateau is already reached in the organizations we work with, the goal is, okay, well, now we're going to have to work differently. We're going to have to work in a different way. And that's going to be working on these separate systems.
So a lot of times when you say the word systems, people think, oh, like these are different softwares that I'm using or different things like that. But I think you're talking systems as more of all the processes that you do within your organization. Am I correct in that understanding?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a very broad way, like the way you drive to work each day is a system. The way you schedule a meeting is a system. The way you answer the phone, it's a repeatable process that is going to happen again and again. And you can get control of it. Maybe you do get control of it with a software, right? But you don't have to, right? There could be ways where you say, hey, I process this invoice, and it's a system. It involves some mechanical parts and with some software, some automation, some people, maybe a couple of different people, maybe some physical envelopes. There's a bunch of different pieces that make up this system. But once you identify it as a system, then you realize that the people can be switched out. And most organizations we work with, it's switching out managers, leaders, expensive people to lower cost, more junior people who can do the same work, maybe even better, maybe even faster, if they are trained properly with a system that's documented. And so that's what we're talking about with regards to systems.
So when we talk about work the system, it makes me think of the other book, The Systems Mindset by Sam Carpenter. How maybe we can talk a little bit about what that means, in reference to how we've been speaking right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So whenever we're talking to leaders, they all get, hey, we should document our SOPs. That'll make sense because big companies do it, small companies don't. But they probably should if they want to get big someday. And so people get that. But what we want them to do is go a layer deeper and think about everything in life. And so Sam Carpenter writes about it in terms of the systems mindset. And this is an outside and slightly elevated perspective on you, the things you do, the things your organization does, and realizing that each of the results you're experiencing in your life and your business are resultants that happen because of the systems that led to it. And these separate pieces that led to these results, you're in control of. You're in control of those systems. And so your results that you have currently today are not random. They can very logically be analyzed based on looking at the past. And so if you want to change future results, you're going to need to change your systems to create new results. And the idea is it's supposed to be a very empowering mindset shift, as opposed to I'm a victim of my circumstances or my results. Instead, it's I can actually change those and do it in a very logical, mechanical way if I look at the separate systems that got me there. And so we want owners, managers, employees, top down to all get this systems mindset. And instead of be defeated or frustrated with the current reality, realize, okay, instead of just focusing on different results, let's focus on different systems, knowing that the results will take care of themselves. And so that's a lot of what I want people to do, is not look at today, look at the systems that got them there, and let's work on those, knowing that if we do that, it might be a week, might be a month, might be 6 months, we're going to see a massive change in the results. Like the results will happen because things will get faster. And usually the first result is always, I'm feeling less stressed. I'm feeling like work is just going smoother. Like things are just, like there's less mistakes. Why is it happening? So they kind of feel it first. And then after that, they start to notice it in terms of their time, like the managers, the owners I'm working with, like I got more time in my day or my week. They start to notice that they actually have some flexibility or some ability to work on those special projects, those initiatives that are push the company forward. And then they start reviewing their financial reports or their metrics or their KPIs, things that they're starting to track. And they're like, wow, our numbers are getting better. And then they start realizing, especially if they're the owner or the profit sharing, that there's a lot more money at the end of the day. And they can't necessarily point to one thing or another. It's all of these things that they've been worked on, the systems that they've empowered their team to work on, are all working slightly better or a lot better. And that's what's ultimately ended up with the higher bottom line.
Yeah. And I can't help but thinking as we talk through this, it's very top down mentality. And if you're a business owner, you're trying to share that with everybody. How do you inspire and motivate your employees, your middle managers, people underneath you? Because not everybody is able to have that systems mindset all the time. If you're just low level, person who's just kind of doing some more of the administrative work, it's hard to have that systems mindset. So how do you translate that to people's daily jobs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And the whole philosophy, the WTS method is about empowering, enabling that at the lowest level possible, right? And the more that your frontline employee gets it, and then they start to work in that way, the better, right? And you want to top down in terms of educate and inspire through a clear strategy. We call it the strategic objective, and clear principles. We call them operating principles. But then we want them to take ownership of their work. People like to have autonomy. People like to have ownership. And we give them autonomy and ownership of the work or the sphere they get to work in by saying, hey, why don't you help us generate the documented systems for this department or for what you do? Because you're already doing it. So you can write down the way it's being done. And then we all get to work on making it better. And you get to optimize and improve, because people like to improve. They like to get better. They like to be rewarded for improving their work. And it's not that their work doesn't matter. It's work that their work matters so much that we want to write it down and make it even better. And so once they're inspired by the strategy and the vision, and once they realize that they're a part of making a great business, being congruent with the future. And once they see, hey, this company is going somewhere, like we're not just going to stay chaotic and be, a horrible place to work forever. We're actually building this infrastructure so I can see the leadership knows where they're going. And I want to be a part of this. And I want to be a part of making it better and then rewarded for what that's going to be, whether it's promotion or higher pay, because companies that systemize their business, they have more money, they have more profit. And therefore their people can get paid more and have more advancement. So they get to be a part of that. So the more you can sell them on the vision of what they're a part of and empower them and give them autonomy through the systems they work on, the more they're going to actually enjoy their work. And that's the goal, right? That's the goal. But, reality is some people, they don't care.
Yeah.
Like especially the lowest level folks, they're just coming to work, just a job. They don't really care that much. They like the way they're currently doing it. They don't really want the extra accountability. They don't want the extra administration. They don't want to optimize. It's whatever. Who really cares? They like to kind of just follow their gut, and that's good enough for them. Well, ultimately, as you're working on the strategy I'm talking about, the work the system method, those people are not going to fit, right? They're not going to fit with the strategy, the culture, the direction you're going. And those people are either going to have to come on board, or they're going to have to be, I guess, thrown overboard, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is part of it, right? Part of it is that those types of people, since they don't embody the vision, can't be congruent with the business. And so they have to be let go so that you can keep optimizing the business. And so that is part of the process. I would say the faster you try to integrate this philosophy and this methodology in your business, the faster it goes, the more likely you're going to have more people leave or you're pushing them out. Maybe the more slow and steady you implement this, the more people will get brought along, because they might not like it at first, but then they might get a taste of it and say, hey, my work is actually getting better. And, things are smoother now and I'm saving time. So they'll eventually buy in and they can be a part of making your company great.
Well, and it also allows them time. If you improve your daily process each day and it frees up time, it actually allows you time to think. It allows you time to come up with ideas. It allows you time to grow as an employee as well, so that you can say, hey, I want to get to that level too. So it's an even balance if you kind of buy into that.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone can contribute. And even the lowest level person, I don't know, I'm just saying a street sweeper, and they might come in the first day of work and they might say, hey, there's actually, if we swept this way instead of that way, we could do it a little bit faster. And the streets would be a little bit cleaner. Great. Great innovation, like anyone can contribute, even if it's something lower. And this might be a $100 million company where the leaders are trying to innovate on a different scale, on a different kind of trajectory. But if the lowest level person's also a part of that, that's what you want. You want everyone to be innovating with the extra time, the extra capacity, the less stress. When you have that, both the strategy, the principles, and the freedom of control over your systems to make them better. People like that, right? They like to, test out and experiment and try to improve new things. And as a manager and leader, you can actually allow your team to do that because they have the framework and the boundaries and the document system to start with. And then you're letting them do these micro experiments on their own and then report back up what's working.
A lot of times when you're a business owner or entrepreneur, you're still getting started, you're starting slowly growing, that you might be listening to this and thinking, that's great in theory, but I am constantly having to intervene in the daily operations. I'm constantly having to look at things because you're just growing. So how do you build that systems mindset as you're growing? Because, you don't want to wait too long so everybody gets set in their ways, but you also want to have that kind of growth mindset. How do you balance that, especially when you're getting started?
Great question. Yeah, I think that it's important for people to know that you're pursuing perfection. You're pursuing being the best business. That's a direction, but part of the way to get there is iterative and requires mistakes, right? Some industries are okay with more mistakes than others, right? So if you're, I don't know, a heart surgeon, probably don't want to make too many mistakes. But if you're, I don't know, if you're a creative agency and you're designing labels, well, it's okay if there's a few flubs along the way as you're trying to optimize your business model. And so knowing what industry you're in, knowing what the tolerance is for mistakes is going to allow you to take more risks as you're growing the business. But companies that grow the business, we let them know that, every company I'm working with, I say, is on a train. They're already on the tracks, they're moving. So you're never going to get this perfect opportunity to stop the train and let's all work on making it better. No, it's moving. You've got income coming in, you got to provide a service, you got to, you got costs going out, you have things happening in real time. And so you have to do what you can while you're in the middle of it. So if you're in the middle of making a sale, work on that system. If you're in the middle of going to a convention, work on that system. If you're in the middle of hiring somebody, work on that system. So if you're working on systems as you're doing them, that's going to be the best approach because it's simple and you immediately get the benefit because you're in the middle of doing it anyways. And that's all I want with my clients is, hey, you're in the middle of hiring and you're going to do, let's just say orientation. So record that orientation. Great. So now the next time you're going to do orientation, maybe you're going to use that recording, or maybe you're going to find a way to optimize it or make it go a little faster. And then the next time you might realize you could delegate that to someone who's lower. And then maybe there's a way you could add some technology so that it's better. And so each time you're finding a way to improve the system that is going to happen again and again without getting stuck and saying, well, in the perfect scenario, someday we'll perfect the system because the systems, business is not static. So you have to make them nimble enough to always be improving. And so a lot of times what I'll say is, document as you go and record as you do things, because at least you'll have a record of how it's done the best you could do it today, of which to improve upon tomorrow. And with the hope that it might be someone different who could improve upon that system. And I think that the perfectionist clients that I have, they don't like that because they don't want a record of them doing it not perfect. And, your imperfect action is going to be as good as you're going to get today. So get a record of it, whether it's in writing or it's a screencast video or it's an audio recording, a video recording, some record of it, so that that's going to be the baseline for the next time that system is run. And you'll always find little nuances, little ways to improve it, whether it's the experience or lowering the cost or making it faster or, optimizing some aspect of it. And that's what makes work interesting and fun and engaging is someone might say, well, I've done this 100 times, but can you do it better? Can you do it faster? Well, I don't know. And the answer is always yes. And that's what I always push my clients to do. And then usually after we analyze one of their systems, they say, gosh, I never realized we could do it that much better if we actually took the time to focus on it.
I like that mindset, that concept, that idea that you're never finished. And I think that's sometimes when people go through these processes of, these massive strategy sessions and they go off to offsites and have consultants come in and they do all these things. And then they sit and say, okay, this is our new model. And they leave it in place for another 10 years. So they realize, oh, wait, we should have been improving this all along. So I love this idea that you're saying that you're never done. You're constantly looking at the systems.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of times I'll fly in or I'll work with a new client and they will have documented all of their procedures in their entire business, but they did it 5 years ago. And so they'll say, we got everything documented already. But the issue is we don't do any of those things the way we did it 5 years ago. So all of this stuff we documented is obsolete.
Yeah.
So it's trash. And we've got different people, we've got different technology, we've got different products now, different services, different price points, different location. It's all different now. And instead of seeing documenting the systems of the business as a project where with a finish line, like you said, instead it's a mindset, it's a strategy, it's a way to operate. And if you operate with that strategy, then it is always going to be a culture of continuous improvement, not just in theory, a culture of continuous improvement, but it's going to be in practice because you're going to see, hey, we just improved the way we punch in and punch out in the morning and at night. That system got slightly better that last week. Hey, we just improved the way we, whatever it is, order inventory because we tweaked the way we did our system and now it's a little bit better. And so you can mechanically see, the culture of continuous improvement is not just this idea that leaders like to talk about. It's actually happening and we're seeing the results, in our systems, and then we're seeing it in the bottom line.
I love that idea. And because you have to continuously improve, you have to continuously look at things in order to become better. And let's say somebody's listening to this and saying, like, I'm really interested in this. Are there common mistakes or challenges, maybe some examples you can share that you've seen, that people can look out for as they're trying to move toward this mindset?
Yeah. The common mistakes and challenges, we could talk for hours on that. But the most common ones is that if you have multiple leaders, and one person buys into it, but the other leaders don't, then you're going to have problems, right? So one owner is saying, hey, team, we're going to start working on this, but the other owners or managers are saying, no, move faster, move faster, move faster. If you can't constantly be rushing and reacting, moving fast, and simultaneously slowing down, analyzing your systems and making them better. And so if you have leadership that does not agree on this initiative, then it never works, right? So I see it all the time. I also see it when there is a lower manager, not the owner or the CEO, but someone who's a mid manager or lower. They try to implement this. Also doesn't work because the long-term benefits of what's happening in their organization, they don't see and they don't care about. And so again, they are pushing their managers to react and perform as opposed to build out their systems. And so they're not appreciating the infrastructure that's being worked. And I've seen that happen often. I also see companies where they overcomplicate it, where they'll say, we love this idea. So now we want every procedure in our entire business documented in the next 60 days. We want them all to have diagrams. We want them all to have automations. We want them all to be, in special formatting. And they make it too big, too complicated, too fast. And the team never absorbs it. And they end up realizing they're spending $700 on each procedure they document. And they do it for about a month. And they say, this is way too expensive. This is way too hard. We're never going to do this. And so the starting with initiatives like this is extremely common, where they make it too big, they make it too complicated, and they might make it overly secure as well. Whereas they need like 5 levels of passwords to get into the system to update it, and then no one ever updates it. And so my advice to everyone like this is to keep it as simple as possible, because the simpler it is, the more you can engage everybody. So if it's as simple as saying, hey, you know what? We're going to, we're going to be hiring that new person tomorrow. We should probably document how we onboard them with a checklist to make sure that they get all the things that they need. Now, that sounds good. Write it down as a piece of paper. Maybe someone types it up. Great. We have a new system now. And then it can get refined. But you got to start with something really simple.
Yeah.
And so people can start to get traction with it.
Yeah, starting simple makes a lot of sense, because I'm sure somebody wants to jump in with both feet and try everything, but you kind of see what works and what works within the organization, within that culture, and you have to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, any change initiative, the bigger the change initiative, the more drastic, the faster, the less it gets absorbed. And so it's always better to start small and to build momentum, to build buy-in, to build, buy-in and make sure everyone is on board, and to give it time to work. So just because it's an idea, then it needs to actually be put into writing, then it needs to be put into practice. And then in practice, the feedback loop needs to come back and with additional tweaks and optimizations for absorption, for buy-in, and then management needs to actually make sure they're consistent with the new way and possibly even measure it to see the results and hold people accountable to those results. And then, that system's been utilized, let's say, for a few months. Now it's fully absorbed into that particular department. That was a lot of work. And you can do multiple at the same time, but you can't do too many at the same time too fast because again, the full absorption of the system never happens. So you never get the benefit. So I'm always big on pushing people towards this strategy and then letting them know that this is going to provide you benefit immediately, starting tomorrow and in the future for decades to come. But you have to always be going. Maybe you have your foot in the pedal at 30 miles an hour today, 40 tomorrow, 20 the next day, kind of just maybe 10 miles an hour during a really rough season for like a few months, but then back up to 20 miles an hour. But you have to always be going forward. And maybe just slam the accelerator and say, we're going to 90 tomorrow. And it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather see continuous progress going forward at a slow speed than stop starts, because those kill change initiatives.
Yeah. So as we look to the future, there's so many things changing, in the markets, you've got inflations, you've got things like generative AI taking over, like there's so many things happening. How do you see this work the system method evolve in the future? Are there trends and different advances that you see that could influence this method?
Yeah. So I think that the method is not going to change. This whole idea of leaders and managers and owners getting stuck, but needed to move beyond that. That's been around forever. This need to have a clear strategy, clear principles, clear procedures. That's not going to change. That's been around forever. The things that change is new opportunities in technology and innovation, new ways to work in terms of instead of just, working on an agrarian family business with your relatives, we now have the internet and an international business. So there's a lot of ways to get a lot of work done with a lot of great people that are not necessarily in your own backyard. And that's nothing new, right? And then the technology innovations and abilities to use, whether it's AI or automations is obviously exploding, and the ways to use that are continuing to expand. And so I think that the more nimble you build your systems, the more you're going to be able to react to the changing marketplaces. Whereas maybe 50 years ago, things were a little bit more stable and you could build a system and it'd be the same for 10 years.
Yeah.
Now you build out your system and you have to stress test it and evaluate it. And it might need to be modified more rapidly, more often. And you might need to be less dependent on a person doing it. Like, hey, that's Ricky's system. He always does it great. Well, people are jumping around a lot more. They're less loyal to their employers and they're more likely to move. And so you might need to focus more on the system being simple and delegatable and dividable, as opposed to, well, I know Ricky's going to be here 20 years, so it's good enough.
Yeah.
Because that's not the future of culture and business, I don't think. But I will tell you, this book, Work the System, I'm showing on the video. I know no one sees the video, but Work the System, Sam Carpenter, the author of the book, he's had the same employees after he shifted his mindset, shifted his strategy. Pretty much all of his employees eventually got worked out of the business. And as he brought in new team members who embraced this strategy and embraced his philosophy, they've been with him for decades, some 20 plus years. And they love working there because it's calm, it's serene. They love working there because they do great work. And they love working there because they get paid more there than they get paid anywhere else doing the job that they're doing, because there's so much additional profit because it's being run so well. And so once someone works in a company like that, they don't want to go somewhere else. And so the more you kind of build in the systems in your business, you're going to increase the longevity of your people.
Yeah. Well, Josh, you've got some great insights. Everybody, please take a look at the show notes for links to the books and to connect with Josh. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Hey, great to be here, Adam.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.